Hello everyone, this is Bradley. So previously people asked me about a question about can you actually put a stack of cards and finally drop all these cards onto a text object, kind of reviewing effects kind of stuff. So I think it's kind of very doable in animation nodes, but currently in geometry nodes, I'm not sure if you can do that right now. I know people had done that in the past, but I'm personally not very sure about the method. And even if you can do that, it seems the method will be extremely complicated, which I do not want to touch. So I'm going to use animation node, which I think is kind of more usable. I'm going to use the preset from my preset library. You can download that for free from the link in the description. So let's start. So let's go to nodings, and the first thing we're going to do is to create a text object. And you can type whatever you want. I'm going to make that center and center. Okay, so once we make it center and center, I'm going to type animation nodes. Okay. It's very important for the font because I realize if the font is too thick, sometimes it does not review it very well. But I probably will just stay as the default B font for the moment. And then next step, we're going to transition, we're going to put a lot of points within this font. So object mesh data, and select this text object. And there's a node which is called a mesh point scatter. Put the mesh into the place. We can see how the points is being generated on the top of that. So we can increase the amount. So you finally just make all these kind of points covering the text so that when the card is being dropped, it can review the same text information. So we can roughly see there's animation nodes, the text going on. You can also change the seed, but that's kind of a whole point. You can increase the amounts, but at the end, eventually it will cost the performance, as we will see later, because the method that we use is a little bit costing performance, but I think it's kind of the easiest method. Next thing is we're going to create another group of vector, which is stacking our cards. Okay, so that node I think is distribute linear. So you just have linear and you find the distribute linear. We put the vectors into the amount, so it will automatically get this length. So we're creating the same amount of points, but we run into a wrong direction. So in this case, you can change whether it's eventually the size or step. I think it will be better if we choose step. Essentially, it does not really matter which one you choose. I think the size will probably be better because I don't want to make it too far. Okay, there's another thing that I personally would like to do, because I do not want all these kind of points directly goes to the cards below. So I would like to move this vector a little bit. I'm going to use a empty and transform vector object and choose our empties, just to move that a little bit. You can also use the matrices. Sometimes I think the matrices is even better. But we're going to change all this kind of matrices information. So up to this point, it's not meaningful to use matrices. I will show you why. So next thing is we're going to start to make a kind of a spline, connect these points and the last point, something like that. Okay. So here we are going to run a loop. This is the moment that geometry nodes cannot do, and I asked developers, they have no plan to do that for the moment. So if you select node, hit W goes to right, you loop through vectors. Okay, and within iterator, I'm going to take another vector list. Okay, and then I'm going to connect them together. Within the loop here, here's what I'm going to do. I'm firstly going to create a spline. So create a vector list. So combine these 2 points together. and take a spline formation node, actually spline form points. And then we're going to evaluate spline. Within the range count, I'm going to take the amounts, whichever you want, probably 25 or whatever. We can also change this using the step method, so probably 0.4, just temporarily. And then we're going to add a math function. So before we add the math function, I just want to take a spline formations. Basically, spline formation and the spline form points are the same. The only difference is this spline formation will smooth out the spline, but the spline form points won't. And then we're going to output this spline. So let's hit this plus icon and finally to output the spline list. The reason to do that is just for you to better visualize for the moment. So take a splines within a 2D spline. Okay. So once we see these splines, let's see curve object outputs. Frequently people are hitting all these kind of round buttons, even if there's a warning sign if you do not. But it's very important. So now we are actually connecting all these kind of spline, making all this kind of whatever trees. Here's one kind of issue that you first need to realize. One is the order of the connection. Like the top points is connected to the left, the bottom is connected to the left as well. I would like to make them more organized. So there's a node that I created in the past. And finally, this turns out to be a use case for it. Because when we scatter the points, everything is random. So the index is random. Maybe this is the first point, this is the second point, this is the third point, this is the fourth point, this becomes the fifth point. That's why when you try to match all these kind of points up, everything becomes random. In this case, maybe this is what you want, but if you would like to have more orders, like I want the revealing effect that goes from left to right all the time, then there is a node which is called axis value sorter. And we just connect the vectors into place and outputs to the place. Okay, so now we can actually see the top always goes to the right and the bottom always goes to the left. We are going to reverse this list so that the order becomes different. So the top goes to the left and the bottom goes to right. So this is free to change. You can just you can decide which one to use, or you can even without using all these kind of nodes so that you keep kind of random fashion. It's up to you. Okay. So once you have done this step, we're going to try to manipulate this spline. So this is the spline. Actually, we're going to make it the path for our cards to move. But obviously, we don't want our cards to move straight. We want to make it kind of more projectile. So in this case, we're going to add a math function within these locations. So what we're going to do here is firstly to add a vector math. If we add up the points, for example, add a 5, then everything has been moved up 5. And here, what you can realize is that we're going to eliminate this addition effect at the position, at the start and the end. Okay, so here what we're going to do is we duplicate this vector math, and we take a take a multiply. So if we multiply 5, actually we're going to take the scale. Okay, so if we multiply the scale to 0, then there's no effect. Finally, it will output 0, right? So here we take a float range and select the node, hit U, goes to socket settings. We have interpolation. You can also access these functions within the node, within the N panel. It's the same. Okay, then we put the locations into the amount. It will automatically get list length, and we're going to take this list, and we're going to use the stop mode. In fact, this interpolation does not work if you're having the step mode. Okay, just to know this. And we put this effect to the B, and immediately you can see at the start point, which is this one. The start point has no effect, but the rest has been moved upwards. So this is the idea. But I would like to have the zero effect on the both start at the end. So we have to do a curve interpolation, or there's a node which is called a mirror interpolation. So if you're doing the curve interpolation, you have to manually drawing this kind of point to something like 0, and then you put that. Immediately it becomes something like this. So this is the point. Or you can use the mirror interpolation. I recommend you to put the, and then it looks like this. And this is the result. So if you hit W goes to viewer, this is the result that you are getting. So whichever way, which is manual or which is automatic, it does not really matter which one you choose, just to choose the one you like. But here's one thing that I personally do not like, is like different points is getting a different, is getting almost the same height, and just the projectile seems to be a little bit different. I think this is okay. Maybe I'll just stay with it. But in the original animation, I've done something that's based on the index. I'm having a different value of the translation that I was looking for. But I think this will be just fine unless being otherwise proven. So we'll probably just move forwards, and you can tweak all these kind of things by yourself in the meantime if you're interested in and you're knowledgeable. Okay, so here let's just hit E and select the entire network. We're going to move this away. Actually, we can use the Control J to frame that so that we can move everything away. Okay, so now let's look outside the loop. We have this spline list, and the whole point is these spline are just the paths, and we're going to use a follow spline list, put the spline in. So we have our objects, which I'm creating as a plane. I'm going to scale down this plane, and then to follow this path. Okay, put the matrices in matrices, select our plane, mesh object output. Always hit this kind of circle buttons if you're outputting anything, and now everything is kind of crazy. But so first thing is I'm going to remove this 3D viewer. Next thing, I'm going to scale this a little bit down. Okay, so and we're going to remove this, hide this path. So this is actually too large. We can also scale down the original plane a little less, and then reselect the plane. So now we have this animation nodes, okay, which is fine. I'm going to disable this loop. So if I pay the parameters to 1, then it goes back to these locations, okay? And then if I hit the 0, it goes to review the animation nodes text. I want that opposite. So here, I guess I'm going to reverse the list. So now it becomes 1 to review the text, 0, nothing. Okay. Yes. So next thing that I will do is I'm going to decompose matrix. Because I would like to effect this all these kind of 3 channels, translation, rotation, scales separately. If I do not do that step, you can see the rotation at the animation nodes is kind of random. It's because they're following the spline, so they're following the tangent and the normal of the spline, which I do not really want. I want them to be plain and to review the text. Okay, so this is the first part. The second part is the scale. I want this entire cards to be large at the beginning and then small at the end. So there are many different things that we're going to do. For example, in parameters, not everything is changed at the same time, but we're going to have a delay effect. So essentially, we firstly need a delay effect, and then we deal with the rotation scales, always the delay effect. It might sound confusing, but just follow what I do, and I hope you will understand later. So select the node, hit use. In socket setting, there is a custom parameters. So normally when we use this follow spline, we're using this parameter. But there are also cases if you would like to have a more detailed control like the offset delay, then you use this customized parameter. And I'm going to take a delay forth and evaluate forth. And I'm going to move everything little afterwards. Okay. I'm going to hit these buttons, 1, 2 buttons it's called use list buttons. And then it will switch everything into the amount. We put this spline list into the amount, it will get list length. And put the forth in. And put the strength into the custom parameter. Fortunately, the strength or from evaluate forth always range from 0 to 1, which is the same as what we controlling parameter normally. So now by playing this time, you can see how this card is being moved one by one. Okay, so there are several settings. One is the delay or duration or depends on the frame. So you know how to work with it. Duration, I'm going to change that to 10, I guess. Also, there is one problem I realize is the translation actually occurs from the button to up. So I'm going to switch this reverse list the button. But if I reverse the list the button, you will realize it again reviews from the right to left. So I'm going to remove this first reverse list. Okay. So now everything looks kind of good. So this is how this delay forth works, and here several things I'm going to do. I'm going to make it large scale at the beginning, smaller scale later. So we're going to remap this scale. So the inputs, the minimum and the maximum is from 0 to 1. But the outputs, I'm going to reverse that to 1 to 0.2. And then take it back to math. Take that as a scale. I'm using the scale from this follow spline list so that, okay, so now it becomes too small. I'm going to increase the size a little bit. Okay, so now it's fine. The reason I'm using the scale from this follow spline list is because I would like to add some randomness for them. Okay, so for the scale, I would say this is basically it. Then next step is actually the rotation. The rotation is a little bit tricky. So I'm going to create a new rotations, for example, using the ruler wiggle. I'm going to use the list. So if you're using the list, you always put the get list length into the count. Basically doing that is because I want every card is having different rotation. And I'm going to put the amplitude to 360. And you can also put the time info series connected to time and connected to evolution. So just to prove the time, I'm going to pause this animation. So because this processing time is already 200 milliseconds, just to make this is a kind of acceptable number, I would say. But just for the moment, I'm just going to decrease that to 200 so that it's easier to work with. Okay. This rate factor, if you do not enable these buttons, then it's division, which in this case we're just trying to reduce it so that it removes faster. Okay, and I'm going to increase this animation to 500. Okay, so this is how it looks like for this moment. And then we put these rulers to the rotation. So every card is having different rotation, but I do not want rotation at the beginning and at the end. So does it sound familiar? Because we just done the same things within our loop. So in this case, what we're going to do is to take a new map range. No, I'm not going to take the map range. I'm going to use the evaluate interpolation. This node is basically a map range functions from 0 to 1. And I'm going to take a mirror. Make it sigmoids. This is, I think, the same interpolation as we used previously. Yes, the same. And finally, ruler math. Take that to scale. And put the values into scale. Plug the rotations to rotations. So we have no rotations at the beginning, at the end, but we are having this kind of whatever in the middle. You can also increase the amplitude so that it looks kind of crazy. Whatever, it does not really matter. And then this is kind of how the animation looks like. Basically, we have finished this animation already. Just to remind you several things. For example, at the most beginning, I would like to have a little bit random rotation because not everything is just 100% no rotations. They are straight despite a little bit difference in scale. If we remove this difference in scales, then it's just a tower, a straight tower. It's a little bit boring. So, because if you stack cards, it won't be so organized. So I would like to add a little bit of randomness. So here, what I'm trying to do is to add another ruler wiggle node. But in this case, I'm not going to add any rotations on X and Y, just the Z, and plus that. To the card. So it rotates a little too much. So here, I think, so let's not use the ruler wiggle. Since we're not wiggling anything, I'm going to use the minimum maximum list and count into iteration and combine ruler. At the end, it does not really matter which one you chose because it's up to you, but I just think it would be better if we just use this and take the absolute range and take that to pi. Probably too much. Let's take that to 0.5 or 0.2. So we have a little bit of random rotation, but not too much, just not to make it a straight tower. Okay. And we also can change, because the gap between papers or cards are kind of large. So we just decrease the size to 2. Okay, so now it looks nice. Okay, so up to this moment we finished basically all the animation. I want to remind you one last thing, because when I'm reviewing this kind of text, everything is the same color. However, if you would like to put texture onto that, it will be like an image texture or other things. It will be making that a little bit difficult. Actually, you can, because I've discussed the similar kind of concepts in the past in my hexagon animation. But just to know that in such kind of case, you should not actually you can use this instancing object, it's okay. But in other cases, if you're having different cards having a different poker face, then you probably would like to use object instancer method. I've also discussed in another tutorial. So all the informations you can go to right upper corner, the eye icon, you can hit for some references. Okay, just to know that if you're trying to put any kind of poker face on all these kind of cards, it will be very expensive with this object instancer. Otherwise, if you just put a general texture, for example, like a picture as a whole reviewed from this card, then it can essentially be easier done with this instancing object. None of these can currently be done with geometry nodes. So in the end, I would just simply recommend animation nodes to do this function unless geometry nodes being improved further. Okay, so I hope this is not a too difficult tutorials. If you have any questions, you can join the Discord. The link is also provided in the description. So I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. I'll probably see you next time. Bye bye.